Don't you ever threaten me again.
And if you ever come near my family again, I will kill you.
Alright boys and girls, today we're going to discuss one of my favourite moments from season 3, Mark versus Cecil. Because every Invincible fan has their opinion on this fight. Was Mark's crash out valid, or was Cecil in the right for what he did? And the fandom is kind of split on this issue, which is why I want to give my opinion on this and settle this debate once and for all. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, the first thing to understand is why are Mark and Cecil fighting? Basically, at the end of episode 1, Darkwing and the Reanimen save the Guardians of the Globe and all the other Earth heroes because they got trapped by Doc Seismic. Now, normally when you get saved, you celebrate, which everyone else was doing, but oh no, not Mark. This man was crashing out. Why? Because Darkwing is a criminal and the Reanimen were made by D.A. Sinclair, who is also a criminal, and this pisses off Mark because Cecil said to him that they were in prison, but that was a lie. So Mark goes to press Cecil for an answer because he's not having it, and then of course everything goes crazy. So with that established, now we can talk about if Mark should be mad at this, because he does raise some good points. Darkwing and Sinclair both did terrible things, and they definitely should be in prison, especially Sinclair. He was really torturing people and he nearly killed William, so he has every right to be mad. Plus, Cecil did lie to Mark. He said that they were in prison, but they weren't, so clearly he betrayed his trust, and Mark is allowed to be mad at this. If I was in Mark's shoes, I would be pissed off too. However, Mark's reaction here was definitely overdone for a few reasons. Firstly, Darkwing and the Reanimen literally saved everyone. They had to clean up Mark's mess because he sold the fight hard, and I don't know if Mark was still holding back, but there is no reason he should be losing to this centipede thing. Because if a couple of Reanimen can take one down, then why can't Mark? It's either because he was holding back or because he was distracted after seeing Eve got hurt. Either way, he sold that fight, and he should recognize that he got his ass saved. Tackling Darkwing to the ground and destroying the Reanimen is not the answer to the problem here. Take a breather and then go talk to Cecil about it. So Mark is definitely looking in the wrong right now because his reaction was overboard, but there's still much more to unpack. Because right after this, he flies over to the Pentagon and confronts Cecil, and they go back and forth for a little bit because of course Mark is still mad that these murderers are running free, but he doesn't have the full picture, which Cecil explains to him. Because Sinclair and Darkwing have been psychologically reformed and are working with the GDA now, and there's two things I want to highlight about this conversation. Firstly, Cecil says that he's giving them a chance to make up for their mistakes because he doesn't want to let their talent go to waste. And there is merit to this argument because Darkwing and the Reanimen have proved themselves useful already. If they were just rotting in jail cells, then maybe the GDA wouldn't have been able to make good use of the Reanimen technology. Plus, Darkwing made the ultimate sacrifice against one of the Invincible variants. So with this hindsight knowledge, Cecil was right. They were definitely reformed and were saving lives. But of course, this is still hindsight knowledge. So going off of just what Mark knew in the moment, Darkwing and the Reanimen did still save the day. So before crashing out, I think he should have extended Cecil some grace and listened to what he had to say properly. The second reason Cecil gives though is much less convincing. He says he admits that Darkwing and Cecil are murderers, but implies that Mark is a hypocrite for wanting them to go to jail when Cecil didn't send Mark to jail for killing Angstrom, or at least we thought he killed him back then. This, however, is not a fair comparison at all from Cecil, because Angstrom was trying to kill Debbie and Oliver, so Mark had to act in defense of his family, whereas Sinclair and Darkwing were just killing for the love of the game. It's completely different. With that logic from Cecil, we might as well just free all of the murderers, but of course he wouldn't do that. Cecil will only free those who can provide value to him, which might seem selfish, but of course he is using them to further the interests of the whole world. So even though the logic is flawed, you kind of have to see where he's coming from. He sees value in these two corrupt people, and if they are reformed, then they can be used to save millions. So it's a totally valid trade-off, which is why Cecil is still looking in the right so far. But now we move on to the second confrontation, the White Room. As soon as they get in there, Cecil brings out some Reanimen for his defense. I know it might seem as if Cecil's escalating things too far here, but you have to remember he is a human, and he has given Mark multiple chances already to stand down. Plus, they were just there on standby, not attacking, and Cecil was right to feel threatened, as he was only protecting himself. Also, Cecil clearly doesn't want to hurt Mark, and if anyone understands how Mark feels, it's Cecil, because he was just like him back in the day when he killed those two criminals, which is why now he's trying his best to make Mark calm down, but that doesn't work, and Mark bangs that Reanimen straight in the jaw, and from here it's up now, because he destroys the rest of them. Cecil can't even believe what he's seeing. Look at his face. And then Mark is like, is that all you got? But of course Cecil just brings out the rest of the Reanimen on standby. But even when he did that, he's still just telling Mark to stand down and talk so that he doesn't have to hurt him, which is reasonable. But then Mark just has to go and say, I'm not the one who's going to get hurt, which is crazy to say, and I do honestly think Mark's in the wrong for saying that, since Mark's issue was with what Cecil was doing with Sinclair and Darkwing. So why are you now threatening violence to get your way when Cecil is still just asking for a chat? So up until this point, it's really looking more and more like Cecil is in the right. But then Cecil pulls out his trump card and uses this device to transmit a noise to Mark's earpiece, which he implanted in him. This right here is messed up from Cecil. Firstly, putting this device in his head against his will is truly crazy. You cannot violate someone in this way and expect everything to just be chill. Secondly, Cecil didn't do this to anyone else. I know his excuse is that there isn't anyone else with Mark's abilities left, but he's definitely singling him out here, which is not fair on Mark. And he did not necessarily have to do this, because so far Mark has proved time and time again that he is fighting for Earth. You do not take a beating this bad and then become evil. It's really messed up for Cecil to do this. But on the other hand, we can sort of understand why Cecil had to do this, because it's true. There isn't anyone else who's a Viltrum on Earth. So after what Omni-Man did, I can see why this precaution was taken, but it's definitely an extreme precaution to say the least. So this right here is a bad look for Cecil. And while I still think Cecil is more in the right overall up until this point, this action alone almost evens out the playing field in terms of who is more in the wrong. But lastly, we have the final fight to cover where everything goes wrong. At this point, all reason has gone out the window. Mark is not trying to hear anything Cecil has to say, and Cecil is pressing that button like there's no tomorrow. Then the Guardians get involved, and a fight breaks out against all these Reanimen, which is a W from the Guardians. At least they stepped in to back Mark. But of course, Rex blew up the transmitter, which really screwed everything up, because there was a whole 2 to 3 minutes of fighting, and the whole time, Mark's just rolling around in pain, unable to do anything while getting beat on by the Reanimen. So as soon as Rudy intercepts that signal, it's up. Mark destroys every single Reanimen left. And after this, we get the final conversation between Cecil and Mark, which isn't much of a conversation, to be honest. Cecil kind of just dunks on Mark a little bit, but he does say something important here, which is that Mark is willing to have grace for Omni-Man, but nobody else is allowed to make mistakes from his perspective. And I can see why he's saying that, because Omni-Man killed a lot of innocent people, and Mark was willing to forgive him. So why is he so stubborn to extend that same grace to others who have committed similar crimes, but on a much smaller scale? So with all that said, hopefully I've discussed each and every detail closely for you to make an assessment on who you think is in the wrong. And overall, I still do think Mark is more in the wrong than Cecil, but that does not mean Cecil is in the right, because he did something really messed up, which is hard to justify. It's just more so that Mark is being very hypocritical in his stance and was also the aggressor in the situation. Cecil gave him many chances to back down, and eventually he forced his hand. It's just the act by Cecil was disproportionate, almost inexcusable in my opinion. I don't think fear of Omni-Man was a good enough reason to do what he did, but that's pretty much my thoughts. And if there's one sentence to summarize why Cecil is more in the right, it's what he said towards the end of the episode in his conversation with Donald, that sometimes people change, bad guys reform, and good guys forget who they're fighting for. It's just the way things go. And that's a reality that Mark needs to accept for everyone, not just for Omni-Man. But that's all for this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Yeah, I just realized this video is 7 minutes and 55 seconds, so I got a yap for a little bit just to, get over that 8-minute mark so I can get that ad revenue. But how you guys doing though? You guys doing all right? Having a good day? Having a good life? Hopefully you guys are well, man. I just thought I'll check in on you guys instead of just putting a black screen on the end of the video like most people would do. But yeah, hopefully you guys are all right. But yeah, that's all from me. And okay, now I'll actually see you guys next time.